We're filming in Manhattan. It's Martin Luther King Day, and I'm very pleased to have Junior Mance with me as my guest for a second interview for Hamilton College Jazz Archive. Welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here again.
I've been looking forward to following up on some of the things we talked about the first time, and actually wanted to get an update on where you've been. I know you're well-traveled.
That I am.
So since, it's been 2 years, I think, at least.
Yeah.
What are some highlights of the places you've been since then?
Well, I still go to Japan a lot. I still do the 100 Gold Fingers tour. In fact, we're doing it this year. It starts in May 21st through June 8th. And we're doing that again. And I've been going pretty much most of the same places. Mostly out of the country, though, to either Japan, or Europe, or Canada. I go to Toronto a lot. I do the jazz festival there, and there's a club there I play annually.
Do you handle all your own business affairs?
I do, believe it or not.
Yeah.
You know, I've had a lot of managers in my life, some good, some bad, but I don't know, I just decided to try it myself, and, you know, I kind of like it. Yeah. It's very time-consuming. You know, my days are as busy as my nights, you know, like usually, even when I'm not working, I'm on the phone all day, you know, but I kind of like it, you know.
Yeah.
It's kind of nice to know more about the business. I've been teaching more also at the New School University, it's called now, you know, instead of the New School of Social Research.
Oh.
Yeah, our jazz department has grown tremendously, and I'm teaching 2 classes there a week on blues ensemble classes, you know, and I'm still doing private teaching there. And that I like, you know, I never thought I would like it so much, you know. A couple of my colleagues, you know, asked me to try it, you know, and I've been there 10 years now as an adjunct, but not as, you know.
Do you take on students who already play piano?
I do.
And they want to learn?
I don't take the beginners, no.
Right.
Because that, I'm not very experienced in teaching anybody from the very beginning.
Yeah.
You know, when I try to think about myself, I say, I was unusual. I don't want to teach somebody like me. Yeah. But no, most of the students that I get are really good players. I'm able to select them. You know? Yeah. And the blues classes are great too. You know, and we still get people from everywhere. I mean, all over the world now. You know, I think when I started last time I talked to you, I think our enrollment was, each semester was under 50 people. Now it's over 200.
Wow.
Yeah.
I understand they just had some dealings with the union or something, and
it worked out. I had misgivings as if they were able to pull it off, because being adjunct is hard to get the things they were asking for. But we got them. Yeah, we got a raise in salaries, but the main thing they were campaigning for was benefits, pension, you know, health insurance and all that. And we got it all.
wow.
Yeah.
Maybe I should send your team up to where I work.
You know what? We were the first ones in the city, and I understand that that a lot of the other programs like ours are investigating.
Yeah, they're going to sit up and take notice.
In fact, there's a couple in the new school. They're not music programs, but they have adjunct professors, you know, and adjunct teachers, and they're going after it. They've hired our lawyers, you know, and asking advice, you know, like you said, from our team, from the union people. Yeah.
Are you able to teach the blues and improvising without getting too technical with it? I'm not sure I asked that right.
No, you were saying it right, because as I mentioned before, the last time, when they asked me to teach the blues, I said, well, how do you teach anybody to play the blues? And their answer was, oh, you'll find a way. You know? Believe it or not, I'm still looking for the right way, you know, yeah. But actually, I try to leave all the technical aspects out of it, because then it becomes like a structured blues thing, you know, which most of them already know. They know there's 12-bar blues, some of them don't know that there are 8-bar blues and, you know, even 16-bar blues and 24-bar blues or 20-bar blues. But that takes no time to show them, You know, so I stick with more the feeling, the spiritual or emotional side of it, you know, and it works, you know, and I guess I have sometimes the same students keep coming back. I've had students who come back all 4 years, and these are like the better students, the A students, you know, and they keep coming back. And I find myself, I don't know whether this sort of pushes me a little bit to come up with different ideas, but I do each semester. And I think this is why it's still fun to me, you know. And I've asked different students, why do you keep coming back? Oh man, we love this class, you know, we learn something every time. And it's for all instruments, not just piano. You know, it's an ensemble. That's why they changed the name of it to ensemble, because we usually have enough people like for a band. You know, like I had to sort of put a cap on it, because sometimes I was stuck with like 6 piano players, 6 drummers, and the classes are 2 hours long, and everybody's not going to get a chance to play. So now I limited it to 2 piano players, 2 drummers, 2 bass players, so they can trade off. Horns, I sort of a little looser on that, because sometimes that's always different. Like like last semester, I had 4 saxophone players and 4 trumpets, which was great. But the thing we're short of, strange enough, in the school is trombone players. There are only 2 trombone players in the whole school.
I can relate to that. Same thing up where we are.
Really?
Yeah. It's just, I don't know, I think it's fallen out of, maybe not out of favor, but it's just not an instrument that is attractive.
Well, it's not an easy instrument. Playing the trombone is like learning how to play the violin, which is supposed to be the hardest instrument to learn, you know, because they have the positions, you know, on the slide, just like positions on the violin.
Do you ever get any string players in the class?
I had a jazz cello player last semester from Italy who was fantastic. You know, like his idol was, remember when Oscar Pettiford made those records playing jazz cello? And he played like that, but he loves the blues, you know. And he's coming back. And he's also a wonderful bass player, too, so he's going to come back doubling, you know. He's the only string player, unless you want to call guitar players. That's the one I had to weed out, because I was getting 6 and 7 guitar players every semester. So I told them no more than 2 guitar players for each class.
Do you memorize some heads with them?
Yes.
You make them memorize melodies?
In fact, we try to work more on heads rather than music. Some things we might use, say, a lead sheet. But if you notice blues bands, they're very improvisational on the gig. You know, you hear them come up with these backgrounds and things, you know, like making up just on the spot. And this is what I'm trying to teach them to do, and they love that. You know, now, you know, after like the first couple of weeks, you know, they're kind of in the dark, then somebody will, as they used to say in the old days, set a riff. And they pick it up like that. You know, And they're all good musicians because, well, still, as before, you have to be auditioned to get into the school. And you have to be a sophomore to get into my class. You know, so they're pretty well trained on things like that by the time they get there. You know, it works good. Because I tell them stories like Sweets Edison told me once that the Basie band of the late 30s and early 40s did not have a book. They had no written music. And some of those early records you hear are head arrangements. I said, are you serious? He says, yeah. Somebody in the section will like just play a riff, and I guess their ears are so trained, you know, from playing jazz, you know, jazz being improvisational, I guess you must have good ears, you know. And they would pick it up just like that, and you would think that all of this stuff is written out. Well, now it's all written out, you know. They said, but back then, they said, no.
In fact, I hear stories about guys who used to accidentally lose parts from things that got too difficult, you know.
I heard this, you remember the famous baritone player, Serge Chaloff. He played with Willie Herman. You know? Well, Serge is a wonderful baritone player, but he had memorized the whole book. But Serge had a habit of coming to work late, or, you know, coming back after the intermission too late. You know, Woody was getting sick of it, you know. I told him, next time, Next time you're gonna get fired. Next time you're late. So I said, Serge showed up late, and Woody fired him right then. And well, I gave him his 2 weeks notice, you know.
Uh-huh.
So the bus was traveling, you know, and so they were crossing a bridge over a river.
Yeah.
So Serge took his book, the baritone book, and just flung it out the window into the river, and just looked at Woody and says, "You can't fire me." He says, "I got it all up here."
Oh.
And he did. He knew every part. And there are some players that are like that. I remember Gene Ammons was like that. I mean, not as far as being late, but I mean, as far as they have a photographic memory. Gene Ammons, we played in a local big band called Jimmy Dale's Band in Chicago. And Gene would just look at the music once, and he's got every note up there. And he concentrated then on phrasing. You know, so he became as important to the reed section as a lead alto player. In fact, even the lead alto player, they'd want to follow his, you know, leading, because he would have the right inflections or the right spirit, you know. And so I guess Serge was like that too, you know. He told me, "You can't fire me."
No.
So he couldn't until somebody, you know, copied the book again, or you know, wrote the parts out, and that took a while, because you know they had a book like was that thick, you know.
That was nasty. Jeez. I think I heard a follow-up or something about Woody Herman getting back to him. Something in the Bill
Oh, yeah?
book. It was pretty nasty, actually.
Probably did.
Something about using his leg as a urinal or something.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, that's true. That's true. I know that story. They were at the bar or something. No, I heard that was a true
Wow.
story.
Well, you're mentioning Gene Ammons. Reminds me, I wanted to ask you about, for the first part of your career, you were playing with different combos and stuff. And eventually you got to a point where you started becoming your own leader. Of your trio.
Yeah, that was years later though. After Gene Ammons, that was I think it was about 1961
Uh-huh.
that I
Yeah.
gave serious thought to becoming a leader, because I made my first record as a leader in '58 or '59. It was on this Verve record called Just Plain Junior. I was playing with Dizzy at the time. And Norman Granz, who then was the owner of Verve Records, you know, he was also the producer, so he came out of the booth, you know, during a break and says, "How would you like to do your own album?" You know, and I was speechless. I didn't know what to say. Fine, I said, "Yes," you know. And so I did the first album, which had Ray Brown on bass. You know, he says, "Do you mind using Ray Brown?" I said, "Are you out of your mind? Are you kidding?" Of course. Like, love to use him. And not taking anything away, we had a great bass player in Dizzy's band at the time. We had Sam Jones.
Oh.
Yeah, who, you know, I had already made up my mind, well, Sam's going to play on this. You know. In fact, Dizzy's rhythm section, Sam and the drummer at the time named Lex Humphreys. And, but Ray, you know, was sort of Norman's or Verve Records house bass player.
Yeah.
And he's on all the records. And I said, "Yes, I'd love to use him."
Right.
Yeah, and that was the first record. And it, and all the reviews, you know, the magazines, the critics, everything, they were giving it 4 stars and 5 stars. And I said, "Yeah." And I did with Dizzy's blessings, you know, because at that time, I guess I was in my 3rd year with Dizzy. You know, in fact, I spent just about 3 years. You know. Yeah, and yes, and I tried it. It was a struggle, but I don't regret it.
Yeah.
I still like playing trio best. I've tried other configurations of bands. In fact, a record we had come out last year on during the Jazz Cruise, a floating jazz festival trio featuring Joe Temperley. Well, Joe and I work together a lot now. You know, Joe's a wonderful baritone player. You know, in fact, to me, he's the best. You know, and he's playing other instruments too. We do things where he's playing the bass clarinet.
Right.
Yeah, and So we worked together quite a bit in between times because he's with the Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra, you know, and they love him there. And Wynton Marsalis is crazy about it. He's the oldest guy in the band, you know, but probably the one with the most experience, you know, and he has that sound, that blending sound.
Yeah, I have
doesn't
that CD you mentioned.
Oh, you do?
I love that, the version you do of In a Sentimental Mood.
Oh, yeah.
With him way up high in the baritone.
Right, doesn't he get a great sound?
Really very evocative.
Yeah, it's not harsh or coarse like a lot of baritones can sound to get up there.
It almost sounds like a Joe Williams singing falsetto or something.
Right,
Nice.
Yeah, and we also do a thing on there where he does bass clarinet, I think. We do the medley, Single Petal of a Rose, and Sunset and the Mockingbird. On Single Petal of a Rose, he plays that on the bass clarinet. Yeah.
What was Dizzy like as a employer?
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah. The one thing I liked about Dizzy, when you joined his band, he didn't try to change the way you played. You know, like a lot of us, and me included, when we play with somebody like that, we sort of had a tendency to play like the person that was before us. You know, like I found myself trying to do things the other piano player did, you know. And finally he tells me, he says, look, I hired you because of the way you play. That's what I want to hear. I don't want to hear you playing like somebody else, you know, playing what somebody else played. Bring your own thing. Because I was in a small group. I did a couple of weeks with the big band, you know, where he had a special thing where he had to get a big band together.
Yeah.
Like I remember a week in Birdland with the big band, and on one of the festivals somewhere where he had augmented the band. But other than that, it was always with the quintet, you know. And so after that, for me, it was a learning process. Playing with Dizzy those 3 years, I probably learned more of what I wanted to learn than the 3 years I had studied, you know, in music school or teachers, etc.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, and just by listening. And he was always eager to show you things. You know, by coincidence, we lived in the same neighborhood at the same time, out in Queens. And I was only about maybe 7 or 8 minute walk from his house, you know, and he'd invite me over, and he had a studio in his basement. And we'd go down there and he'd show me like alternate chord changes to things, and just a lot of things.
Piano too, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
He had such a knowledge of the piano, you know, he had knowledge of chords that piano players didn't have, you know. And, I mean, great, wonderful chords too. So, as I said, it was a complete learning process for me, you know, and just so great. And then, you know, I played the last gig he played in New York. I was on it. He did a whole month at the Blue Note, you know, celebrating his 75th birthday, which he did all year. You know, every place he went, he was celebrating. But he's the only one. It was unprecedented that anyone would work a month in the Blue Note.
Wow.
But each week was different. The first week, I think, was the big band. The second week was the saxophone players, mostly the ones that had worked with him. The third week, I think, was the Latin thing. I'm not sure, but I think that was one of the weeks. And the week that I worked with him, the last week, was all the trumpet players. Let's see, Wynton Marsalis, who else?
John Faddis, perhaps?
John Faddis, Claudio Raditi, Roy Hargrove, and every night a different trumpet player, you know, and that album came out. It's called "Too Dizzy with Love," and I had such a ball playing with him. It was like the first time I'd played with him for any length of time since I'd left the group, and you know, I was just really turned on because I idolized him so much. I'd learned so much from him, you know, and you know, while I'm comping, you know, accompanying the other horn players, he'd turn around, I'd do something, he'd turn around, look at me and smile and wink. And so when he died, I was in tears because the last thing he told me when, at the end of the gig that week, you know, I stopped in his dressing room and said, "Dizzy, thanks for inviting me to do this week, because it was really a treat for me," you know. And he looked at me and grabbed me and hugged me and says, "You're finally doing it." you don't know how much that meant to me, because he had showed me so much, you know, and he says, "You're doing it." He says, "Keep on." That was the last thing he said to me. You
Wow.
know? Yeah. I said, "See you next time." And there wasn't a next time. In fact, that's when he got ill.
Mm.
When he left New York then, and he went out to the coast, and I think he passed out or something, and
Yeah.
died of pancreatic cancer.
Well, it's great that they had that month for him, and
It is.
you
it
were
is,
involved in
yeah.
it.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if they released every week. I think the saxophone players they released, and the trumpet players. I'm not sure.
Mhm.
They might come out with them, you know. They might
Yeah.
hold them back.
You're right. Who was the saxophone player? Was James Moody on the band when you were?
No, I wasn't in the band with James Moody. I've played a lot of gigs with Moody.
Uh-huh.
I sure wish he had been there when I was there. Leo Wright,
Mm-hmm.
an alto player who's passed away also.
Mm.
Young alto player, originally from Texas, but he lived in Germany for a great part of his life. He was stationed in the army there. And excuse me. And then when he finished his army duty, he just stayed there, married, got a family, you know. And but he came back before. No, he came back after that, yeah. And that's when he joined Dizzy. You know, before that, there was no saxophone player. There was Les Spann playing guitar and flute, which is a strange
Oh,
double.
I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah, but he was wonderful. Though. Les played both good rhythmically and solo-wise. And he and Dizzy did a lot of flute and muted trumpet duets, which was nice. One album we did called How Trumpet Will Excite
Mm-hmm.
features that a lot, the two of them. And also another one called The Boonie of Mr. Gillespie. It was actually one session, but we had so much stuff that they did it in 2 albums.
Were you able to, as a member of that group, were you paid per gig, or were you on a salary type
Salary type,
arrangement?
yeah. Because we worked all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were on the road like 40 weeks a year.
Well,
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember you saying when you first heard Bop that you were with a group of people who, obviously somebody had introduced it to you who said, "This is great stuff," and the other people or person you were with said, "No, no, no, don't
Yeah, the
don't
man I
play
was
that."
playing with, said, "You don't want to play that garbage," you know. And the first time, well, I was very young then. I was maybe 17, 18, somewhere in there, you know. And I heard the young alto player who was playing like Charlie Parker, and I had never heard Charlie Parker before hearing this alto player who was about my age, you know. And I said, "Wow!" And it just touched me. And he had a buddy who was playing trumpet like Dizzy. In fact, in Chicago, they used to call this guy Little Diz, you know. And it turned me on, you know. And so I started, you know, playing like Bud Powell, you know, because I started listening to records, and you know. And I was working with this group, which was primarily a rhythm and blues group. That's what you would call it today, you know. And but strange enough, the saxophone player and the drummer in the group were also turned on by bebop, you know. So the drummer just got tired of this browbeating, you know. "Man, why don't you play straight? What are you playing? I'm dropping all those bombs for?" And he quit, you know. And after a while, the saxophone player quit, you know. And I quit too, because he replaced them with people who weren't on that level yet, you know. And it became more or less just like a honky-tonk band, just
Yeah.
straight ahead. Which now I look back, you know, there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
It was a good honky-tonk band, you know.
Did you play mostly for dancing at the time?
Dancing and floor shows, you know, like
Yeah.
not strippers, but shake dancers, tap dancers, blues singers, you know, just a show. In clubs mostly, yeah, regular night clubs. So they wanted to keep it that way.
Yeah. Did you ever have occasion in those situations where someone would bring in, you know, 4-page piece of music for the piano player, and you're going, "Oh God, where's the chord symbols?"
I still feel the same way. You know? I was never a fast sight reader. Excuse me.
Yeah.
But, you know, as a kid, I learned how to read music, but it's something that you have to keep doing it. Once you stop, you know, you're going to not do it as well. And I stopped for years because I went to the small band type way of playing. My reading was probably best right after high school and then my first year at Roosevelt College. I was with this local big band, one I was talking about that Gene Ammons played in. It was like, say, a Thad Jones, Mel Lewis band of today. All the heavyweights were in there in the band. Lee Konitz was in the band also, you know, and we rehearsed more than we worked. We rehearsed every week. It was a certain day, I think it was a Wednesday or Thursday, we'd get together. And the leader was a guy who passed away last year, named Harold Fox. He was a trumpet player, and his family owned a tailoring business that outfitted every band just about in the country. And so Harold more or less took over, I think after his father passed or retired, Harold took over the store. And Harold knew all the band leaders then, you know. And he was trading them suits or uniforms, outfit the band, for arrangements out of their book. People like Woody Herman, Stan Kenton, with some of Lionel Hampton's book, even the Billy Eckstine big band, and Dizzy's big band. We had every big band. We had a book that thick of these great arrangements, you know. So I was in that band, and, you know, they had these long sheets like that, but the music was so good. That encouraged me to, you know, read music. But after that, I never played in a big band again until Dizzy's band. I was on some record dates, you know, where they had these long sheets. But record dates, fortunately for the piano player and the guitar player, they wrote mostly just chord changes, you know, which is much easier to read than when the music that's spelled out, you know. Yeah, and so it sort of got away. When people ask me now, are you a good reader? I said, well, let's put it this way. I spell, I don't read. I'm a good speller. Yeah. But that's why I like teaching the blues. Maybe that's something in the back of my mind as to why I don't have that much music. I have some tunes, you know. Occasionally, I let them work on a bebop tune and get an ensemble to it.
Right.
Yeah. And but other than that, though, I just sort of got away from it. I was never that interested in getting back to it. I was never interested in doing studio work, which is probably the most lucrative part of business, you know. Like, I look at the studio musicians now, even those in the retirement, man, they have pensions in 5 and 6 figures, you know. Mine is barely in 3 figures, you know. And, but studio work is like a 9-to-5 job to me. You know, it's done mostly in the daytime. Mostly you have to be in the studio early, you know, and you're always playing somebody else's music. And that doesn't, I won't say it rubs it the wrong way, but I think I would get very bored doing it. And I just never pursued doing studio music. You know, even though I was asked, why don't you think about it, you know, but I think another thing, too, because I was playing with so many of my heroes when I was young. So many of my idols, like Lester Young, and Gene Ammons, of course. And Leo Parker, the late Leo Parker, the baritone player. And then when I got out of the Army, I had this gig called it was the Beehive Lounge in Chicago, where I was with a house band. There's Roe Crosby on bass, another local drummer named Buddy Smith playing drums. And they brought in singles, like Charlie Parker worked there for a month. There was one time I worked with Charlie Parker. He was one of the people that influenced me to come to New York. At the end of the gig, he says, you should come to New York. You know, and when I finally showed up in New York, I ran into him one day downtown. You know, he says, I see you finally made it. That's what he was telling me. I said, yep, I'm here to stay too. You know, and people like that. Coleman Hawkins played the Beehive. Eddie Lockjaw Davis. Sonny Stitt, just about everybody you can name, you know. And they all came without groups, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And this club would book them for at least a month.
Did they ever bring their own library, or they just expected
No, they
you
just
to know?
brought themselves.
Just
and we
say,
did.
okay, here's what we're doing? And
Yeah.
was there occasions where you'd have to say,
I didn't know that.
I don't know that, but tomorrow I
Yeah,
will?
yeah. Sometimes I'd learn it on the gig. You know, maybe I'd heard the tune, but had never played it. They stuck pretty much to standards. Plus, most of them, you know, I was great for listening to records in those days. You know, like in the Army, I was in the Army with Cannonball, and we had more records than we had clothes in our barracks. You know? We had 2 record players, and we shared a room because I was a company clerk,
Yeah.
and Cannonball was the head of the band training unit. And, we had 2 record players to begin with. And we must have had, at least 100 albums apiece or something. Or we were always buying records, too.
Yeah.
You know, and so all these guys that came in, I knew most of their originals, you know.
Ooh,
Yeah.
nice.
And 2 people, though, that came in there, I learned probably more standards than I ever learned before. Coleman Hawkins was one, and Charlie Parker was the other. They played a lot of standards. Plus, everybody knew all of Charlie Parker's originals anyway. You know. But they would call a standard, and I pretty much knew it, you know, and I'd ask them, well, what key do you want it in? And they both had the same answer: make it easier on yourself.
Oh,
It didn't matter. And it didn't. They were at home in any key. Yeah. So, you know, I'd ask them, I said, well, what's the original? Because I knew that I was going to play the tune again, and nobody's going to, most people play in the original key of the standard, you know. And they would tell me. They said, but if you want to play it in that key, another key, go ahead. And that was a learning experience. I learned more standards from those 2. Yeah. Coleman Hawkins, he had a wealth of standards I never heard of. So,
non-standard standards.
yeah, right. Yeah.
I wanted to play a little snippet of something from your early career.
Oh, yeah?
Well, in those days, and see if it rings a bell with you.
Is that, that's not from the jam session album of Dinah Washington.
No, this is with Cannonball and Nat. The tune is called Spectacular.
Spectacular,
Yeah.
right, yeah. Jimmy Cobb on drums and
Right.
Sam Jones.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know when that was? 1956.
Yeah.
40-something years, 42 years ago.
Man, I'm
43
listening to
years
that,
ago.
and I'm wondering if you ever were in a situation in a record like that, and you know they're counting off the tune like that, and you're going, "Oh, please, not that fast." It sounded awful fast to me.
Believe it or not, I'm in a situation now, you know. I still like to play fast, but not as often. But this was a thing in Chicago. I don't know why all the tenor players like to play fast, which was what I work with mostly. Gene Ammons loved to play fast way up there. But he never would record that fast. You know? Yeah. Johnny Griffin, who still plays a mile a minute, you know, he's from Chicago also, and we worked together a few times, and I think every other tune was like that. And even we played a lot of fast tunes when he and Lockjaw Davis had the quintet. There was a lot of fast tunes in. And when I came to New York, you know, and if I go to a session, you know, I say, what do you want to play? And they look at me and says, when are you going to stop that? So actually I did, because I found out something, that playing fast is easier than playing like this, playing at this tempo. Because in this tempo, you got to think of something meaningful to play. But when you play fast like that, you know, you can put your exercises together, so to speak, you know.
Right.
Or if you know the changes.
Running
you know.
the changes.
Exactly, yeah. And it's easy, but playing like that, then after a while I enjoyed playing, you know, maybe no faster than that, you know. And I enjoy that because it says more. You know, you have to think and construct a nice melodic solo, you know. And I love playing ballads now more than I used to, you know. In fact, I love playing the melody, maybe phrasing it differently, you know, which is almost the same concept as a conductor with classical music. He's not going to change the notes, but he may have his own conception of a phrasing for a particular work. You know, and this is what I sort of equate it to. And in fact, Ben Riley, the drummer, he used to tell me, he says, when you stop playing fast, call me. I'd like to work with you. And, you know, now he tells me, he says, you haven't called me yet. He says, I see you finally stopped going boogity boogity, as he used to say. You know?
No kidding.
But Cannonball used to like to play fast, because this was right after we both got out of the Army.
Yeah.
You know, and we used to do that a lot. We changed drummers a lot. Well, not with the Cannonball, but Jimmy Cobb could handle it well, and the drummer we had before Jimmy Cobb, Specs Wright, could also handle it very well. But I mean, myself, you know, drummers, you know, when they would finish, I don't know if you remember the Red Fox show, you know, he says, yeah, I got my arthritis, he would call it, to hold his hand like that, you know. The drummers I've seen finish and say, man, look what you're doing to me.
I always feel sorry for the bass players, too. It just seems like such a, after a while, a lot.
But they can handle it easier because with the amplifiers, they wouldn't have to play as hard. They could play lighter and just turn the amplifier up, and it's going to sound just as loud. You know, and then the modern day bass players, well, the bass players used to play with just those two fingers like that, you know. But now they play with all the fingers, you know, so they can handle those tempos now. Yeah. A little easier, you know, than the drummers can.
Okay, you probably know that I was going to play this next little piece somewhere in here. Oh, there's the melody. Oh, okay. This has some significance for me.
That's the one that you like.
Is there a story behind this piece, when the way you sat down to?
No.
No? Just
Not really. I didn't know what to call it, and then Harlem Lullabies. Then, believe it or not, I just recorded it again. And yeah, I did it on this live session, and the producer liked it so well. I just did a record for them just a few months ago. It should be out either this month or next month. On Inya, and he asked me would I do it again in the session. I mean, in the studio, and I did it. And I'll have to send you that one because, you know, after you've done a tune a lot, then sometimes it either gets better or worse, you know, because sometimes you can get tired of doing it. I think I did the best one I ever did on this last session. You know, I just like. For one thing, in recording for Inya, this particular producer I had, Horst Weber, out of Munich, he insists on, even in the studio, it's almost like doing a live date because he'll only use first takes. And he has, and just by coincidence, he has the same idea about recording. He says, when you got to do 2 or 3 takes, and I've always had this idea, if I have to repeat a thing, it goes downhill. So usually the first take, you got the feeling that you want. You may miss a few notes.
Mm-hmm.
Horace doesn't care. He said, that's jazz. Everybody misses notes in jazz. It's just that some of the older players, some of us know how to cover up.
Yeah.
You know, we make a mistake, we
Right.
can make it sound right, you know. And I don't know, I just felt pretty good. We did the session at night, myself and Earl May and Jackie Williams. And Earl and Jackie had played the tune with me before. That's usually the trio I use most of the time now, except on the Floating Jazz Festival trios. Keter Betts is the bass player because he was sort of like the house bass player after Major Holly died. In fact, we were put together as a trio on the cruise sort of by accident.
Oh.
Yeah, and it was on the Royal Caribbean line too. It was a tribute to Benny Carter cruise. And the three of us played, and we accompanied Benny and did nights by ourselves. And I don't know, it just sort of clicked. And at the end of the cruise, Hank O'Neill, the producer of the cruise, he says, listen, can I record you guys in the studio? I said, sure. And we thought it was going to be down the line. So the next day, he says, we're going to record at Rudy Van Gelder's. I said, oh. He says, can you be ready this afternoon? And we were. That's when we did this album called Blue Mance. I don't know if you heard
Yes,
that.
I have that.
Yeah, that was the day after the cruise.
Wow.
Yeah. And so we've recorded every time since then.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but anyway, that's back to the story. That's why Keter is on it. But Keter lives in Washington, D.C., you know, and he's busy with a lot of things. And he's I think, on the board of BET,
Oh.
yeah, the Black Entertainment Network.
Right.
Yeah, in the jazz department, you know. In fact, I see him playing on there so much, you know, with most of the groups. Plus, he's, you know, as I say, he's on the board of directors of it also.
Mm-hmm.
So he's very busy. And he's involved in a Head Start program. He's,
Right.
Yeah.
Working with real little ones.
Right, yeah. Yeah, well, he loves doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Earl May has been sort of my regular bass player, and Earl is like a rock at Gibraltar too. His rhythm is just, he and Jackie like play so good together. Jackie is like one of the best rhythm drummers I've played with.
Mm-hmm.
The two of them together is, I heard a guy say once that time is so good you can set your watch by it.
Well, this tune also contains one of the best. That was it. I just have to play this lick.
Yeah, but anyway, that night we just all felt good playing it, and it was a one-take thing.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I'll have to send you the new one. It's played the same with a different solo and maybe something that Jackie and Earl contributed to it, you know,
Yeah.
with their feeling. Yeah.
Wow.
But Horace Weber, the producer, he loves that tune. He says, please do it.
Well, he's got good taste then.
So we did it for him.
Do you have, when you finish a tune like that, do you write it out in what shape or form?
No, I write it out usually after I record it.
Yeah, right. Well, sure.
For publishing purposes, yeah.
Yeah.
But actually, that tune and Jubilation, they're not the only tunes I wrote, but probably the more meaningful tunes. Jubilation was the first tune I ever wrote. That was when I was with Cannonball. I wrote it in 55, I think. And I still get tremendous royalties from it, from Japan especially. They love that tune over there for some reason. In fact, I've recorded it with other groups in Japan 3 or 4 times. You know, the groups that asked me to be on their record.
Yeah.
And here they come with Jubilation. Some of them even come with it written out.
Oh, that's high praise.
It is, I consider it so.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they love that tune.
Gee, the Japanese jazz audience is really quite well informed, isn't
Oh
it?
man, aren't they? You know, they know so much about you. You'd think they slept under your bed all your life. You know, writing down everything about you. They know everything. You know, they just, I tell you, they buy more American jazz records than Americans do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the record is never taken out of print. Like the first record I ever made, Junior on Verve, that's still available on CD. Same cover, same album notes. You know, and now it's an import here. They imported it from Verve, you know, and then they're exporting it back. Because I was in Tower one day and I saw it. I said, oh, it's available here now. And I looked at the price on it, $23, because it was an import. I said, are they nuts? $23, yeah.
Oh, gosh.
But they had it on sale.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You know, in fact, a lot of jazz records that are hard to find here. In Tokyo especially, I like to frequent the record stores there. There's one called Wave, W-A-V-E, that's the name of the store. They got about, 2 floors of just any jazz record you can name. You can ask the guy, and he'll tap on the camera. Oh yeah, we have that. And I remember one year, I spent over $400 on records. Because now CDs are high there. They're in the vicinity of about $20 a piece.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, that's only about 20 records that I
Right.
bought. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, but they're all records that were out of print long ago in the States. See, but now they're coming back because, you know, I bought a lot of records through NARIS, you know, the National Academy of Recording Arts and Sciences,
Yeah.
the Grammy people.
Yeah.
And I get them for $7 a piece because I'm a member,
Oh.
you know, a voting member. That's why they send us this monthly catalog, you know, with all the new releases. And believe it or not, over half of the jazz releases they have are reissues. And when you get them, they're from Japan. Yeah, they got this Japanese writing in the covers, you know, inside. And so they are available here now. So I don't have to buy quite as many. Don't have to pay quite as many $20.
Right.
You know? Yeah,
Would you ever go out and buy your own record?
I have.
You have.
But it's only because it was so old and I didn't, maybe, I like to keep a copy at home.
Right.
You know, and if it was scratched or something.
I think you told me you didn't have this.
Now I do. Oh.
Yeah, but you can't have this.
Oh, okay. No, now I do. There's a guy, yeah, I was fat then. Yeah, well, you can't tell much about it, but I was weighing about 210. And
Really?
yeah, I'm down to 175 now.
That's a nice shot right there, isn't it? Just Junior and his record. You look
Yeah.
pretty. You look in good shape to me.
Yeah, that's the record you want. That's the original Harlem Lullaby.
Yes.
That's the first
I
one.
had to look
yeah.
around for this because I originally owned it. And
That's
then I
the version that
went-
was playing here,
Yes.
right? Yeah, and then it sounded great.
Yeah,
And
it's
it's
great.
on a-
This is also the record you did the harpsichord on.
Oh, yeah.
Remember?
That was a trip.
Dink, dink,
Yeah.
dink. What? Not. I'm singing Take 5. There was a
Uptown.
Uptown. The
Yeah.
Uptown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The hardest thing about that was, you know, the harpsichord. It wasn't an electric harpsichord. It was an acoustic harpsichord. They're so delicate
Mm-hmm.
and so light that the sound, like if you notice in an orchestra even, when a harpsichord plays, the rest of the orchestra isn't playing behind them, like they're playing passages, solo passages, because the instrument is so light and so soft,
Wow.
you know, and you can't hammer it to play it to get.
Doesn't make any difference,
You
right?
got to play it lightly, yeah. But so the way we had to do that, I had to record it with the rhythm section, on 3 different tracks.
Mm-hmm.
And then they take the rhythm section tracks and put them through the earphones. And then I'd play it on the harpsichord, and the harpsichord has been boosted to the level in the earphones. But they tell me that for release, they had to boost it about 5 times again,
Wow.
to make it sound level. You know? Yeah, and that's what it sounds like.
Where'd the idea come from to use a harpsichord?
Actually, there was a harpsichord in the studio. Somebody must have recorded some harpsichord music, maybe classical music before that, and I was just fooling around with it. And the producer says, "Hey, let's do a tune with you playing harpsichord." I said, "Yeah, why not?" And we did. It's been done before. I'm not the first one to do that. Johnny Guarneri did it when he was with, I think it was Johnny Guarneri with the Gramercy 5 Artie Shaw Band.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they did a bunch of things with harpsichord and a 5-piece combo. And probably they did it the same way because I don't think they had the electric harpsichord then. Yeah. Now they got electric harpsichords that only used like in jazz or other pop music.
Right.
And they can boost it up, and you can record right there on the same level.
Did you ever have an occasion to use the Rhodes?
Not on a gig. I'm not fond of electric pianos or electronic instruments. To listen to them, yes. To play them, no. Because the touch is too different.
Yeah.
Same with the organ. The organ is an entirely different touch than playing the piano.
For sure.
Yeah. But I like to listen to a lot of things. There's a lot of things Herbie Hancock has done on the Fender Rhodes, or Bob James is another one who's like great on the electric piano. But personally for myself, I had one once, and only reason I bought it because I could put the earphones on at night. Living in a high-rise building, the walls are thin in today's apartment buildings. And I wanted to practice on it, but I used it mainly for composing, not for playing. And I got tired of it. I got bored with it, and I gave it to a student. The student didn't have anything to practice on, and the student was more into writing. He was into the composition. And I gave it to him, so that he could, work and do his homework at home with it, because he lived in a place where he couldn't play at night also. I just bought one. I bought a Yamaha, but I didn't buy it for practice. The reason I bought it, I bought a computer, which I know nothing about yet. My wife does, so she's going to teach me. Being a teacher, she's really into the computers,
Right.
And I bought this Yamaha keyboard with 61-note keyboard. As a matter of fact. Oh, sorry about that.
I thought I was hearing things.
No, it's noon and this alarm goes off at noon.
Time to get up at noon.
I'll tell you a funny story about this in a minute. So the reason I bought it was for composing with the computer. They have music software.
Yes, they do.
One's called Finale and one's called Encore. And I want to get into that.
Right. I've done some Finale.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Ben Brown, the bass player, gave me a Finale and Encore because I think he upgraded his. He gave me probably the older ones, but I still haven't learned how to use them.
There's enough there
I
to
have
learn.
them back in
Don't
time.
believe me.
Yeah, so I want to really get into that, especially. Now I might use it more, like for the classroom work. Anytime I want to do parts, I can do them, and play them, and they'll come out.
Yeah.
I think, yeah. So that's the only reason I bought, just to use as a MIDI.
Right.
I was going to tell you about this watch. Last year I was doing jury duty. Now the jury duty, you have to get there early, and I was on a case, And, I'm not an early in the morning person at all, So I'm leaning on my hands, I'm falling asleep. So after a while this thing goes off. And it's quiet in the room, It's like between the district attorney questioning a person, and everybody stops, and so I happened to open my eyes, you know, because the quiet will wake you more than noise will.
Yeah.
And the judge is looking around, and he looks at the clock, and the clock is set exactly with my watch. It's 12 o'clock, you know. And so the lady sitting next to me, she hunches me, she said, I think that's you doing that. And then I hear, I said, oh my goodness. You know, shut it up, I said, sorry, Your Honor. And even he got a kick out of it, you know. He says, it's lunchtime anyway, recess. Be back in the clock, you know. So I think that the rest of the jurors were also glad that I went off, you know. I know I was, because I was finding it hard to stay awake. And it was a boring case, and they do give you recesses if they find you like really getting bored or sleepy or tired. You know? Right. They want you fresh all the time. So we took the lunch break.
Wow.
But it was embarrassing, you know. I woke up in the whole courtroom. They're looking right at me like I'm on trial or something. You know?
I'm innocent.
Yeah. The judge smiled and cracked a laugh, you know. So sorry about that. So the next day I wore a different watch. Should have worn it today.
Just a couple things. I have noticed an awful lot of press. Jazz is getting a lot of press lately. It seems like almost every week in the New York Times there's some article about something. Is it translated to a better working situation, do you think, for musicians?
Well, as far as New York, there are more clubs. For the working situation, I think that's something a union is going to address next. The clubs, you know, for a lot of reasons. They said the clubs aren't paying the benefits, or they're behind on them, you know, and the pension funds and all that. Like, well, you know, the Broadway shows, the Broadway theaters do, and the studios naturally do, you know, and the recording companies. The clubs are the only one. But as far, that's another subject altogether. As far as the music itself and playing, I think it's better. I do.
Good.
Yeah. The working conditions are much better. The club I work in mostly, I travel so much that when I get home, usually I want to just enjoy home. It's now that I'm married anyway, especially, you know. But this club Zeno's is a club I work more than any other club. The owner is probably one of my best friends anyway, you know, and plus it's around the corner from my house. I hang out in there a lot. They used to just do duos, you know, but they moved their music room to the back. It's bigger now, and they have groups. You know, in fact, I worked there with the quartet, you know, the trio plus Joe.
Yeah.
Joe Temperley.
Oh.
And, excuse me, it's just a joy working there because there's no, you know, watching the clock or anything. You know, we play what we want to play. And most of there's a lot happening jazz-wise. The Vanguard is going strong as ever. Sweet Basil, the club down the stairs here, the Iridium. Yeah, and even the Blue Note. You know, there's more places. And also, what I think is a good climate, the students, you know, at the school are finding more work. Now, they're not making the salaries that they should be making. There are a lot of clubs in the East Village, jazz clubs. And the students work there. The wages are horrible, really. I wish they could get better wages. But in order to learn how to play jazz, you got to play jazz. You know, playing is one of the best vehicles for learning this music. And this is probably the only reason why they do. Some of the places look like dumps, you know, but you can go in, you can hear some of the best music. And it's usually the good players that want to play, you know, and they, some of them have steady gigs, you know, like they may have one night here and a night at another club like that, you know. It's a little extra money for them,
Right.
you know, but it gives them a chance to play, and I love that. There used to be this club I think it's still going. I haven't been down there in a long time. It's down in the village. Oh, what's the name of it? I think it was in a minute. Anyway, it's a club. There's no alcohol, and the guy doesn't want any.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't want a liquor license because it would stop a lot of the students, the younger students, from coming there. And that's what it's for. And the students, he does hire a band, but there is a lot of sitting in going on. And by not having a liquor license too, sometimes students are playing in there till, say, on the weekends. They may start a jam session at 2 in the morning and not finish it till 10 same morning, like Saturday night, and finish like 10 o'clock Sunday morning.
Wow.
Or something, yeah.
Well, that's kind of keeping with a tradition that's been, from what I've read, that's how many of the great musicians learned anyway,
Yes.
in those situations,
Yeah,
in those
yeah.
classic Kansas City jam sessions that used to last
This is
so long.
something, the word probably kind of got out on me, telling about my life history and how I learned to play, And I don't know, the phrase always jumps out. You students are so lucky to have a jazz school. Not just this school, but all the schools, students are lucky. I said, they didn't have jazz schools when I was coming up. In fact, I got expelled once for a week for practicing jazz in the practice room.
Mm.
That's why I dropped out of college, because I wasn't learning what I wanted to play. I wasn't allowed to play jazz there. I wanted to be a jazz musician.
Mm-hmm.
So then I tell them I sort of, you might say, learned to play jazz on the streets. Because I would go out even as a teenager, like you want to say when I was 15, 16, and 17. Where all the jazz clubs were on the south side, nobody ever checked the IDs in those days.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about the 40s, even late 30s, The days of the so-called untouchables. I don't know if you've seen that program.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
And sometimes, the clubs worked long hours in those days. They'd start playing like 9 or 10 o'clock and finish at 4 through the week. That was a curfew. 5 in the morning on Saturday night. And they were allowed to open at 7 if they wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
They'd open for business, but the music wouldn't start till, 7 in the morning. Music always started like 9 or 10 at night and went to 4. And there were nights I'd hit a half a dozen clubs, and there was really a camaraderie with the old musicians and the young musicians then. They would invite you to sit in. Hey, you want to play some? Come on. If they knew that you could play, well enough to sit in. And that's how I learned in my younger days of, how to play or how to accompany horns. And I tell them this, and they're like, wow. And I tell them this to encourage them to go out and play as much as they can. That's the best way, And so you're lucky to have a school where you can learn all the other things that are needed. You can get your ear training and ensemble work and composing, arranging, etc. And I tell them they're lucky to have the schools. I say, but me, I had to get it the hard way.
Right.
And so the story got out among the students. They would tell the incoming students, oh, you sign up for Junior's blues class, get him to tell you the story about the old days.
Yeah, the old days.
So now I found out I wasn't the only one. That Benny Powell, the trombone player, does the same thing. Well, he's got quite a history too.
Mm-hmm.
And Billy Harper, the tenor player. So I guess the three of us were the ones that were doing it most, So Benny Powell's proposed a project we're going to do soon called the Trio of Griots. I think Griots means trio.
Storytellers.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
A trio of storytellers. And as a group, we're going to hold sessions like that in the auditorium at school.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to tell about the old days, and the school is for it. They're really high on doing it.
That's great.
So we're in the process of putting that together
Yeah.
now. Yeah. You know, we'll do it separate and we'll do it together.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and, for the whole school.
Sure. Well, that's why we're doing this, too.
Yeah, the same thing, right? Yeah.
Right. And it won't be long, I'm sure, before I'm reading some CD of some new upcoming star, and they're going to mention Junior Mance as showing me this or that. I'm sure it'll happen.
Oh. Yeah, but I really love teaching. You know, I didn't think I would like it as much as I did. You know, when in fact, it was Chico Hamilton and Arnie Lawrence that convinced me. Chico was still there teaching too,
Mm-hmm.
and he was there from the beginning. He and Arnie Lawrence. Arnie isn't there anymore. Arnie moved to Israel,
Oh,
where he started a jazz school there.
no kidding.
Yeah. And but he was one of the founders of the New School jazz program.
Yeah.
So when they asked me to come in and teach the blues, I said, I don't know. I said, I don't have teaching credentials. You know, I figured if you're going to teach at a university, you got to
You need
have
a piece of paper or something that says you can do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they, you know, and that's about when the time started that we're in some schools, especially in the East here. Like, oh, I'll put it this way: they gave me an application to fill out. This is a formal thing, and on one line it says degrees, but in parentheses it says desirable but not necessary.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not just for the music department. I found out, like, most of the adjunct teachers, like in journalism or the language department, it's the same thing.
Right.
Yeah.
They've learned it by doing it. And
By doing it, and this is what they want.
Right.
Because, like what they said about the school, they want to turn out more performers.
Mm-hmm.
This is teachers, you know, like take somebody that's been in the music school for 4 years, and this is not speaking of them negatively. They put their 4 years in, get their degree. The next day they start teaching. And what do? They turn out more teachers.
Right.
You know. But they want people who've been out there doing it. Like in journalism, most of the people who were teaching journalism, they worked for maybe, say, New York Times or Daily News or Time Life. And they've been there. They're doing it, you know. And this is what they want. They want to turn out more performers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because there's too many teachers driving cabs because it's just an overabundance of teachers.
Self-perpetuating.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Teachers making teachers, and
Of course, it's
There's
getting
not
that
that
way with
much
performers too. But we'll cross that bridge when we come to
right.
it.
I guess so.
Yeah, but at least with performers, you know, they can go on the road, or there's many,
Yeah.
many
And they can
outlets.
teach part-time like you do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I love it. You know, I intend to continue doing. One thing it's been good for me, like especially since we got this big raise that we're getting, you know, and all of that. It's enabling me to be selective about the jobs I want to play, about going out of town. I don't have to like take jobs because I need the money
Yeah.
anymore. You know, and because I'm doing two things that I like. I'm doing performing that I like and performing where I enjoy performing, and I'm teaching, which I've grown to love teaching.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, this has been a real treat again. You look great.
Oh,
Congratulations on your recent marriage.
thank you. Thank
And
you.
I'm glad things are going well for you.
They're going very well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have no complaints.
And let me know when you're going to be at Zeno's.
Okay, I'm going to be there the first week in March.
Oh,
In
well,
case you're in town.
Tim will have to come back down.
They're doing Wednesday through Saturday week now. And
Uh-huh.
on Monday and Tuesday they have, well, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday they have,
Yeah.
which are slow nights anyway. They have like entertainment, but I mean the main heavy jazz.
Right.
You know, it's like Wednesday through Saturday. So the first week in March we'll be there with the quartet.
All right.
Yeah. So if you're in town, please come back.
Thanks again.
Come by as my
Thanks,
guest, please.
thanks for bringing the
Oh, it's my
recent
pleasure.
recordings. All right.
And I'll send you the new Harlem Lullaby.
Please. And I'll guard it with my life.
Okay.
All right.
Monk, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.